Before you get going in the morning, say to yourself, "Today I'll meet people who are meddlers, ingrates, bullies, cheaters, envious, and antisocial people." All of this happens because they don't know the difference between what's good and what's bad. Marcus Aurelius. "You are a Stoic," said a friend to me a few years ago. I replied with a puzzled look. I knew the definition of Stoic, suffering pain or difficulty without complaining, but the A before Stoic meant something else. He then explained, "You have an almost Zen-like calm through ups and downs. You control your emotions. Do not let external events upset you. Reflect a lot on what happens. Are generally happy and content, and are always wondering how to become a better version of yourself." These are the key ideas behind Stoicism. You should look it up. That was the first time I had come across Stoicism. The fault was entirely mine. The focus on engineering early on in my career meant that the liberal arts were given short shrift. This is the one thing I would undo if I had a chance to live life again. Philosophy was a word I dreaded after doing a compulsory course during my undergrad in IIT. It took me almost 3 decades to forget those scars and take a fresh look at philosophy, economics, and the related arts. As I read about Stoicism, I realized that my friend was right. I had lived life on the principles of Stoicism without understanding that there was a name for it. Since then, I have read up more on Stoicism and have even advocated it to many others. What the Greeks and Romans came up with a couple thousand years ago has modern-day relevance. They also tie in with some of the ideas in Jainism around detachment. These ideas have helped me not just in personal life, but also in business as an entrepreneur, to live through more than 30 failed ventures and maintain equanimity through the 3 successes I have had in the past 3 decades. When I spoke to others about Stoicism, I realized most were like me a few years ago. Very few had heard about Stoicism. Hence this series, to summarize the key ideas, provide some stories from my life, and offer suggestions on leading a better life. We cannot control the events that happen, but can control our reactions to those events. The writings and wisdom of people like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca can help us lead a happier life and also create a continuously improving version of ourselves. It can mean better relationships with those around us, at home and work. And by doing so, we will have less stress and greater mental calm. Each of us may have our own way to reach that state: meditation, long walks, journaling, and so on. But what I like about Stoicism is that it provides a holistic approach rather than point solution. Philosophy is the study of ideas and beliefs about the meaning of life. I wish I had studied it more when I was younger. This series is a way to correct that mistake and offer advice to others who are younger and likely to find it useful. In today's always-on world where it can be hard to find peace and tranquility amidst a constant flurry of meetings and messages, Stoicism offers a guide to a more fulfilling life. 2. What it is. A Stoic is someone who transforms fear into prudence, pain into transformation, mistakes into initiation, and desire into undertaking. Nassim Taleb. So, what is Stoicism? Wikipedia. Stoicism is a school of Hellenistic philosophy founded by Zeno of Citium in Athens in the early 3rd century BC. It is a philosophy of personal ethics informed by its system of logic and its views on the natural world. According to its teachings, as social beings, the path to eudaimonia, happiness, or blessedness, is found in accepting the moment as it presents itself, by not allowing oneself to be controlled by the desire for pleasure or by the fear of pain, by using one's mind to understand the world and to do one's part in nature's plan, and by working together and treating others fairly and justly. The Stoics are especially known for teaching that virtue is the only good for human beings, and those external things, such as health, wealth, and pleasure, are not good or bad in themselves, adiaphora, but have value as material for virtue to act upon. Daily Stoic. In its rightful place, Stoicism is a tool in the pursuit of self-mastery, perseverance, and wisdom. something one uses to live a great life rather than some esoteric field of academic inquiry. Courage, temperance, justice, wisdom, they are the most essential values in Stoic philosophy. Everything we face in life is an opportunity to respond with these 4 traits. The Stoics focus on 2 things. How can we lead a fulfilling, happy life? How can we become better human beings? The goal of Stoicism is to attain inner peace by overcoming adversity, practicing self-control, being conscious of our impulses, realizing our ephemeral nature in the short time allotted. It's important that we understand the obstacles that we face and not run from them. It's vital that we learn to transmute them into fuel to feed our fire. Simply put, Stoicism was designed to help people live their best possible lives. It's a philosophy of life that maximizes positive emotions, reduces negative emotions, and helps individuals to hone their virtues of character. At any moment, in any situation, and at any stage of life, Stoicism provides a framework for living well. It reminds people of what is truly important, providing practical strategies to get more of what is valuable. Stoicism was deliberately created to be understandable, actionable, and useful. Practicing Stoicism doesn't require learning an entirely new philosophical lexicon or meditating for hours a day. Instead, it offers an immediate, useful, and practical way to find tranquility and improve one's strengths of character. Stoicism holds that the key to a good, happy life is the cultivation of an excellent mental state, which the Stoics identified with virtue and being rational. The ideal life is one that is in harmony with nature, of which we are all part, and an attitude of calm indifference towards external events. There are 2 foundational principles. The first is that some things are within our control and some are not, and that much of our unhappiness is caused by thinking that we can control things that, in fact, we can't. Well-being is realized by small steps, but is truly no small thing. Zeno. The ideas of Stoicism originated in Greece and were then built upon by Romans. The Stoics are one of 5 major philosophical schools in classical Greece and Rome: Platonist, Aristotelian, Stoic, Epicurean, and Skeptic. The philosophers who followed Aristotle, 384–322 BCE, were also known as the Peripatetics, named for their habit of walking around the colonnades of the Athenian Lyceum. The Stoic philosophers, on the other hand, were named for the Athenian Stoa Poikile, or painted porch, the roofed colonnade in Athens, where the founder of the Stoic philosophy, Brad Inwood's book, Stoicism: A Very Short Introduction, offers a timeline for the history of Stoicism. Much of what we know now comes from the works that survived, of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, Epictetus, a slave, and Seneca, a Roman author, politician, and philosopher. They all built on the earlier works of the Greeks, which unfortunately have not survived. Ryan Holiday in Lives of the Stoics. Across the first 500 years of Stoic history, its members form an astonishing spectrum of stations in life, ranging from Marcus Aurelius, the all-powerful emperor, to Epictetus, a lowly slave who was crippled in captivity, but whose writings and life were an example that inspired many, including Marcus. Some of their names you may already be familiar with, and others, Aristo, Diogenes of Babylon, Portia, Antipater, Panaetius, Posidonius, Arius, and Musonius Rufus, likely not. But each is worth knowing about, whether they were merchants or generals, writers or athletes, parents or professors, daughters or diplomats. Each has something important to teach us. Each walked the path of virtue in a way that we must learn from. If you want a smooth flow of life, live according to nature. Happiness isn't found in things but in virtue alone. It's all about what we value and the choices we make. We don't control external events. We only control our thoughts, opinions, decisions, and duties. We've each been given all the inner resources we need to thrive. We must eliminate toxic emotions. Why hope, fear, and anger are always the worst strategies. We are and must remain a unified self. We can't complain or blame anyone else. Best to deal with our own demons. No man is an island, the Stoic golden rule. Our personal development is bound up in cooperation with others. Persist and resist. It's all about progress, not perfection. N.S. Gill lists 8 of the main ethical notions held by the Stoic philosophers. Nature. Nature is rational. Law of reason. The universe is governed by the law of reason. Humans can't actually escape its inexorable force, but they can uniquely follow the law deliberately. Virtue. A life led according to rational nature is virtuous. Wisdom. Wisdom is the root virtue. From it spring the cardinal virtues: insight, bravery, self-control, and justice. Apatheia. Since passion is irrational, life should be waged as a battle against it. Intense feelings should be avoided. Pleasure. Pleasure is neither good nor bad. It is only acceptable if it doesn't interfere with the quest for virtue. Evil. Poverty, illness, and death are not evil. Duty. Virtue should be sought, not for the sake of pleasure, but for duty. Paul Jun writes about 9 principles distilled from the ideas of Stoicism. Acknowledge that all emotions come from within. Find someone you respect and use them to stay honest. Recognize there is life after failure. Read purposefully and apply your knowledge. Challenge yourself to be brutally honest. Reflect on what you spend the most time on. Remind yourself, you weren't meant to procrastinate. Put the phone away and be present. Remind yourself that time is our most precious resource. What really frightens and dismays us is not external events themselves, but the way in which we think about them. It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance. Epictetus. About 2 years ago, I was going to Savannah, Georgia, U.S. for an email marketing conference. I had taken the non-stop Air India flight from Mumbai to Newark and was waiting for my next flight at the gate at Newark Airport. I then heard an announcement that the flight had been canceled. My first reaction was that of panic. I knew that there were not that many flights to Savannah, and I had a conference to attend the next morning. I walked up to the agent's counter and asked for options. The first response was that the next available flight they could book me on would be on the following morning, about 20 hours later. In a quiet voice, I told the agent I had come a long way, and I could not possibly afford to miss a third of the conference. Were there any other options? All this was happening as I saw tempers rise around me of fellow travelers who saw their own plans getting disrupted. The agent then suggested an option. If I was willing to travel to LaGuardia Airport immediately, there was a flight from there which could help me get to Savannah by late evening. My checked bag would not be on that flight and would be delivered either late night or the next day. I had minutes to decide. She offered to cover the cab fare to LaGuardia. A younger me would have thrown a fit and argued that they should put me on a later flight from Newark itself. There were flights, but they were all booked. But a stoic me stayed calm and took the LaGuardia option. I have come around to the belief that there is some good in everything that happens. The flight cancellation was beyond my control. What I could control were my reactions. Getting angry at the agent would not get me to Savannah. It was not her fault. The worst case was either that I missed a few hours of the conference the next morning, or I landed in Savannah in the evening without my checked bag. I took the latter option. I made it on time for the flight from LaGuardia. When I landed in Savannah and reached the hotel, my first task was to get myself some clothes for the next day, just in case my bag didn't make it at night. I normally always carry a set in my carry-on baggage, but had not done so this time. After checking in at the hotel, I rushed out and found a Gap store that was just about tea. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius. From 2001 to 2004, my wife Bhavana and I underwent multiple IVF cycles so we could have a baby. Each cycle raised our hopes only to be dashed later. It was a time of emotional ups and downs, as I have written here. While the story had a happy ending with the birth of Abhishek in April 2005, The few years that we went through the IVF treatment was one of the most challenging I have lived through, and it was even more so for Bhavana. But we saw that period through. For Bhavana, it was her faith in God. For me, it was my belief that the outcome was not entirely in my control, and I had to stay strong through the saddest moments. Perhaps it was my early failures as an entrepreneur that had steeled me. India World's success came after many failed ventures and flopped fundraising efforts. Even till the end, it was not clear that I would have a happy outcome. In 1999, as is happening now, everyone with a .com was raising capital, except me. But I had something which others did not: profits. For a brief period of time, profits had no value. All that everyone wanted was eyeballs. In the end, my faith in doing business the right way got me an exit I had not even dreamt of: a sale for $115 million. In the growth at all costs mindset that prevails today, I am once again being told that no one cares about profitability, and I have made a big mistake through the past few years sacrificing growth for profits. I have thought about this often, because I also have the responsibility for Netcore's staff, many of whom have stock options. The only way I know to run a business is to fund growth through profits, and not just through investor money. I grant that SaaS, software as a service businesses, have different dynamics and land grab matters, but at the same time, I also know that once we get in the habit of spending more than we are generating, it is not easy to turn the tap off. Seeing competitors raise and spend capital, seeing some star employees leave because we declined to double their salary in the face of competition which doesn't worry about profits, seeing my own colleagues question my growth and profits approach. It hasn't been easy. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know what my core beliefs are, and I stand by those. Like during India World, I have this faith that nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company. Seneca. As a 10-year-old, I was diagnosed as having glaucoma by an ophthalmologist. While there was no internet for me to help me understand what it was, I understood from conversations with the doctor that there was a serious possibility that my eyesight could weaken as I grew older. My thick specs reminded me daily of a future which I hoped would not happen. Luckily, the diagnosis was wrong, an error of judgment made by a well-known doctor. It was during these troubled weeks that I had developed a new hobby: listening to radio, since I was barred from reading after sunset. The radio opened up a new world for me, and even now, I wake up to BBC World Service News. In my 9th standard, I contested for the post of school captain. I was the teacher's favorite, the stellar, always coming first kid. And yet I lost narrowly, primarily because I forgot my speech in front of all the voters. I flunked my most important test. That failure made me enroll in a public speaking class and learn how to overcome my flaws. In my first semester in IIT, I studied hard and did not end up in first position. I was upset. I was a topper, and now suddenly, I was not. I had not known a life beyond academics. What would I do if I wasn't a topper? And then came a new path, extracurricular activities, and I found my calling in organizing student events. As I was graduating from Columbia in the summer of 1989, I started looking for a job. It wasn't the best of times. A couple months went by and I had done just a couple interviews and had no offer. I absolutely wanted to work in the US, but with each passing day, my hopes diminished. I would sit in my dorm apartment and watch TV to while away my time. And then one day, as I was visiting a friend in Berkeley, I got the call from 9X. I said yes, without even waiting for the compensation package. Those 2 months of waiting had finally paid dividends. In many ways, it was events like these in my formative years that helped make me resilient, and if I can use the word, stoic. I learned to control my emotions, did not go into a funk after failure, channelized my inner feelings into journaling so I could open up to myself, instilled a desire to constantly become better by learning from others, and made honesty, humility, and punctuality key tenets of life. I try and analyze,